Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another character overview video. Today we're taking a look at Kuki Shinobu, one of the Arataki gang deputy leaders, or the only one. And in this video I'm going to take a deep dive into her kit. What does she do? What role does she fill? As well as talking about what artifacts she may need or is going to be using, as well as in general some good builds. So with that clarified, let's jump into the first topic. Kuki Shinobu is a hybrid between a healer and a damage dealer, and this is mainly because of a sanctifying ring. Sanctifying ring creates a ring of sanctification that follows your current active character around, deals electro damage to nearby opponents every 1.5 seconds, and restores HP for active characters within the ring based on Kuki's max HP. So the things to take away from this is that the tick rate is a 1.5 second interval, which is a very good interval. It restores HP, which is also really good, as well as it is based on her max HP. The one thing to take away from this as well is that you have to sacrifice 30% of Kuki's max HP at the time of using the ability to actually activate this ability, much like Hu Tao's elemental skill. To summarize, you can kind of envision this skill as it's the playstyle of Barbara's elemental skill, but the kind of activation requirements of Hu Tao's elemental skill. And this is the only healing portion of her kit, because if we go over to her burst is pure damage. She stabs an evil exonerating blade into the ground, creating a field that cleanses the area of all that is foul, dealing continuous electro damage to opponents within its AoE based on Kuki Shinobu's max HP. If Shinobu's HP is less or equal than to 50% when the skill is used, the field would last longer. So the reason that she's a hybrid between healer and DPS is because her skill, whilst it is a very good heal if you do build max HP, her burst is the complete opposite of being a massively damaging ability based on her max HP. The energy cost of her burst though is 60 with a cooldown of 15 seconds. The duration can vary from 2 seconds to 3.5 depending on if she is above or below 50%. And as I mentioned earlier, the damage is based on her max HP in both regards, the single instance of damage as well as the total damage done over the period of the whole duration. Moving down to her first passive, this kind of encourages the healing aspect when Shinobu's HP is not higher than 50%. Her healing bonus is increased by 15%. So the lower HP that she has, the more healing she does essentially, at the 50% mark being the threshold. Onto the second passive, Sanctifying Ring's abilities will be boosted based on Shinobu's Elemental Mastery. Healing amount will be increased by 75% of Elemental Mastery, and damage dealt will be increased by 25% of Elemental Mastery. This passive is almost negligible because you're never going to have that much Elemental Mastery on a character when they don't intrinsically scale with it. Because she's a max HP character, Elemental Mastery is going to be a small added bonus, because if you have 100 Elemental Mastery, you're only going to get 75 raw HP added onto your healing. It's not 75% increased healing, it's just 75. So it's not that important, but it's an added bonus. Moving on though to her constellations, C1 to Cloister Compassion, Gyoye Narukami Kuriyama writes, AoE is increased by 50%, which is her elemental burst, essentially just making it easier to hit more enemies with her elemental burst. C2 is Grass Ring of Sanctification's duration is increased by 3 seconds, which increases it up to 15 second duration, I believe. And if we remember, that now puts her at 100% elemental skill uptime or potential uptime, as it was a 15 second cooldown with a 12 second duration, add 3 seconds, they're both 15. So in theory, you can have 100% uptime on her elemental skill. C4 to Sever Ceiling when normal, charged, or plunging attacks of characters affected by Shinobu's Grass Ring of Sanctification, her elemental skill, hit opponents. A Thundergrass mark will land on the opponent's position and deal AoE electro damage based on 9.7% of Shinobu's max HP, which is essentially a very much passive Jingcho or Yelan burst during Kuki Shinobu's elemental skill, which in theory you should have up 100% of the time, so you are constantly having a bit of electro application every 5 seconds, because there is this effect can occur only once every 5 seconds. And moving on to the final constellation, to Ward Weakness, a bit more of a, I'm just going to give my personal opinion, not that great, but Kuki Shinobu essentially has a self-revive, much like Hu Tao's C6. She can revive herself. Once she drops down below 1 HP, she will trigger this and she'll be put at 1 HP. This can only happen once every 60 seconds, and she'll also gain an Elemental Mastery boost of 150 for the duration of about 15 seconds after this happens. Overall, not that important. If I'm to say what is the best and most greatest constellation to have for her, it would be somewhere around the C4 range, maybe up to C5. C6 is not that important. but I would say C4 is really strong. Jumping over to building the actual character, taking a look at the weapons first, Kuki Shinobu uses a sword, and if we take into consideration what her main stat is, which is HP percent or max HP, there is no sword in the game that actually fits her main stat criteria. So with that in consideration, all of the 5 stars are pretty much the same. Obviously, the Mist Splitter Reforged and the Jade Cutter are going to take a bit of priority in terms of damage, and then the Freedom Sworn might take a bit more priority in terms of healing. They are all essentially on the same level because none of them boost the actual stat that you want to boost on her. Out of the 4-star weapons, it's the same situation. There's no HP sword, so fundamentally they're all identical. Whichever one you have either more refinements in, whichever one you have that is a damage weapon, they're all going to essentially give you the same kind of end result because none of them boost her main stat, which is a problem on Mihoyo for not having one in the first place, but it is what it is. You gotta make do with what you have. Going over to her artifacts though, there is a lot of obviously options for her. Obviously the most intrinsic one will be Tenacity of the Millilith, which is a 20% HP boost on the 2 set. You can also go for the Tenacity 4 set, which is going to be really good to sustain that periodic buff that you get from her elemental skill dealing damage. So 2 set in by itself, or even 4 set Tenacity of the Millilith is a great option. If you choose to go with a 2 set Tenacity of the Millilith and 2 set another thing, that other thing could be the Electro damage artifact, obviously just to boost her Electro damage. Or if you want to make her a bit more for healing, then you can obviously go for the, I believe it's called the Blue Conch, the Ocean Clam. I'm not exactly sure of the name of the artifact, but the Ocean Clam one, as well as Tenacity to boost her healing. But in my honest opinion, the one that I would recommend for everyone is just 4 set Tenacity. If you want this character in the party, Kuki Shinobu, to be the character that provides the 4 set of the Tenacity buff, and don't have another character in there to conflict with that, because her application rate and damage rate on her elemental skill is extremely high and frequent, so she can maintain that buff extremely well. As for the stats on the artifact, obviously this is very much up for contention right now, but I would make the assumption that on the timepiece you're looking for a bit of HP percent. On the chalice, it's a pretty even split between electro damage or HP percent, depending on if you want more healing or damage. HP is still going to probably be the one that you go for healing and damage. And then obviously on the helmet, you can go for raw HP percent if you just want more healing, or if you want her to be a bit of an in-between crit rate or crit damage, depending on which stat you need for the actual character. Now, as for where Kuki Shinobu fits into your team, that is an absolutely amazing question. And she will essentially be the passive healer in the party that applies the Tenacity buff and can deal some damage. You can say that you're going to use her for a bit more of a taser comp or maybe superconduct application, and she can do those things, but she will just be another DPS that you add to your party. The healing will be as a small bonus, but it's not going to be her main priority because it's done mainly passively through her elemental skill. The massive positive of her elemental skill, though, compared to other characters like Barbara, is that it's continuously passive and you have the exact tick rate of the elemental skill. Unlike Barbara's, where it's a speculation of time, we actually get 1.5 seconds on Kuki Shinobu's elemental skill. The 2 main teams that she'll probably fit into really well is obviously, as I mentioned, taser comps, even maybe a superconduct Raiden Shogun replacement. If you do not have Raiden Shogun, but you have Eula, you can combo these 2 together because of the frequent electro application of Kuki Shinobu, as well as Eula just, buffing her with superconduct. Or even teams like Ayato or Tartaglia, main DPSs, we can cause massive amount of Hydra damage and have Kuki cause the elemental reaction, doing the taser comp, and thus causing a lot of electro charged. Obviously, this damage is all going to derive from her actually running elemental mastery, but that is a separate matter altogether. She won't be a super meta character, but she'll definitely have her place in the game. She will essentially be a replacement for a 5-star variant if you do not have that 5-star variant, and in my eyes, she pretty much is a 4-star version of Raiden Shogun. Official and Kuki Shinobu kind of fill the same role, just Kuki Shinobu has the added benefit of healing the team on top of that. And that's pretty much everything I think to do with Kuki. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If I missed something, or if you guys think of another team composition, or any kind of stuff that I might have missed in terms of how the character works, put it down in the comments. I'll pin the comment. And thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.